In this video, I'm going to talk you through exercises 7.5 through 7.7. We're going to add the check leaf method to our block class, and we are going to use a loop to spawn leaves within the world's setup method. I have already written the code, and so we're going to go ahead and take a look at that. This code here is in the My World class, and they asked us to change the setup method in order to spawn 18 leaves. Remember that there are 3 parts to every loop, and so they're asking us to use a while loop. So we're going to initialize number of leaves to 1. Please notice that the naming of the variable number of leaves is very descriptive in the fact that it is representing the number of leaves. So try to always pick descriptive variables. Our guard statement here is going to test whether or not the loop will be executed. So if the number of leaves is less than or equal to 18, the loop will go ahead and execute. And then somewhere within the loop, we have to update that loop variable. And so if you look at the bottom here, I'm going to add 1, and this is going to be the update to the loop. There's a couple ways that you guys could do this. What is not commented out here is one method where I generate a random number from get width and get height using Greenfoot random number, and then I just add that at the x and the y variables. It makes the code a little bit cleaner and a little bit more understandable, because when I add object new leaf at x and y, it's kind of reads exactly what it is intended to do. It is possible, however, that you could use this line of code right here and do everything all in one line. You can add an object, the new leaf, and then you can use get random number, get width, and Greenfoot get random number, get height. So your choice on which of those 2 methods that you would like to use, but that is, I kind of like to make it so that it is very clear what the code is asking me to do. So I personally would prefer this first method, but both methods are acceptable. The other thing that they're asking us to do is in the block class, we are going to create a new method, and they want us to create a check leaf method. So this particular method call is actually usually written after I write the method, but I'm going to just mention that we're going to call the check leaf from within the act method. That's exercise 7.6 is just to add that method call in. But then the check leaf method itself, if I scroll down, a couple of things while we're going through this. One would be always remember to comment your method. When you're creating a new method, there should be a comment for it. So check leaf determines if the block is intersecting a leaf. If it is, then the leaf will turn. And so this particular line of code was talked about in your textbook, but I'm going to mention just a few things here. And we're working within the block. And so currently, because I'm within the block and I don't actually have access to a leaf variable, I have to create a leaf variable. So the first word leaf here with a capital L is telling me that I'm going to create an object of that class type. The second word here with a lowercase l is actually an actual instance of a leaf. Like we could actually maybe call it leaf 1, or we could call it leaf 2, or we could call it my leaf if we wanted to, or we could call it Mary Jo if I wanted to. I could call it anything I wanted to, but it's kind of nice to just call it leaf, because then you know that you're referring to a leaf. Another thing that happens is we're getting an intersecting object, and this is telling us what type of class I'm looking for. Because I'm in the block class, what this is telling me is I am looking for an object that is intersecting with the block. So I'm in the block class, whatever class I'm in. When I use this get one intersecting object, is going to be accessing or seeing if whatever I put here, if it's intersecting with a block. So if I changed this scenario and I went back to the crab world, I could see if it's going to intersect with a crab. If I changed it to white blood cell, I could check to see if it's going to intersect with a white cell. Something like that. But right now we want to see if there's an object of the type leaf. Now what happens is when you do this is you have to cast it as a leaf. If I don't do that, it might not even compile here. Let me try. It says incompatible types. Greenfoot actor cannot be converted to a leaf, and that's because in the Greenfoot API, if we were to open up the API, we're going to find out that the leaf class returns, get one intersecting object returns an actor, and an actor is more generic than a leaf. So I have to tell the compiler here that my actor that I'm getting is actually of type leaf, and that's what's called casting, which is why this leaf variable in parentheses is there. When I compile now, it compiled, no syntax errors. Another thing that's kind of new in this section is the introduction here of the word null. Null means that there is no object or there is no instance of that object. So when I run the check leaf, if there is no leaf that's intersecting with the block, it's going to return null. That's an actual value that it returns in Java, and I can check that value. So I'm going to check to see if the leaf does not equal null, then I'm going to turn, which then means if it is null, it doesn't do anything. So in other words, if I'm not near a leaf, I'm not intersecting a leaf, I'm not going to do anything. But if I am, if the leaf does not equal null, or in other words, if the leaf is actually intersecting with a block, I'm going to go ahead and turn 9. If we go ahead and take a look at how this executes, if I click run, watch the block as it goes back and forth across the screen, and the leaves will do a little spin or will turn a little bit as the block goes back and forth. That will wrap up exercises 7.5 through 7.7. Good luck.